Welcome to the Secret Sauce of Selling podcast, the ultimate guide and sales gym to unlocking the secrets of successful selling. I'm your host, James Abraham, and I'm excited to be here with you today to share insights, tactics, and strategies to help you take your sales performance and sales leadership game to the next level. In this podcast, we dive deep into the world of sales, exploring those strategies. And today, we have a seasoned guest, a rock star, if you may, in my network, the Sandler Network. We have Eddie Huff. Eddie, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you, James. You're right. I am seasoned. Yeah, that's true.
And Eddie, why don't you give everyone a quick intro of who you are, what you do, and what brought you to where you are today in the world of sales?
Okay, Eddie Huff, and I'm a member of the Sandler corporate team. And my role is I talk to and coach franchisees in the network on a daily basis. And before that, I had a Sandler business myself. I had a Sandler franchise in Augusta, Georgia, for 12 years. And before that, I was a Sandler client. I was fortunate enough to become a client of Sandler when I was in a manager in the yearbook business, and loved the program, the systems, the processes, and thought, okay, when I'm tired of getting on airplanes, I'm going to open up my own franchise, and that's what I did.
Awesome. Well, for those of you who probably don't know this, when I've been in sales all my career from the moment I was born, and when I became a Sandler Trainer, Eddie actually taught me. He taught me how to become a Sandler Trainer. So I take my hat off to Eddie. And if there's one thing I remember Eddie tremendously powerful at when I was in our initial training and getting into the world of training the best salespeople in the world, was his perception of uncovering compelling pain and doing a thorough pain step that is both conversational, emotional, practical, with a compelling enough event to help buyers understand why they need to change what they're currently doing or buy a product or invest in doing things differently. Eddie, why don't you tell us a little bit about what pain means to you and what are your insights with regards to how pain is translated in today's world?
Well, most of if you look at anyone on this call, I think they're prospects that come to them with really bad problems, that the prospects are bringing the problems to the salesperson. It's probably so bad right now that it's almost impossible to fix. They're probably almost broke. They're out of money. And it's pretty much too late many times. Not all the time, but sometimes it's too late. Our best prospects are the ones that there's going to be pain in the future if they don't fix some systems and processes, but they don't know it yet. And we help them to discover, okay, I could get in trouble if I don't take some action and fix some things. And I look at pain in this way, James. The strongest pain, that was one I mentioned before, that's pain in the present. Somebody who's, if you look at it in medical terms, they've got a broken leg right now and they've got to get it fixed. That's pain in the present. And the second strongest pain is fear of pain in the future. And that's that person that we help discover that if they don't take some action and do some things, they could have some real problems going forward. The third level is pleasure in the present. This would be like, well, here in the U.S., it's springtime, and getting a boat right now, you could go out and use it and enjoy it very much. So that's pleasure in the present. But if it were December and it's really, really cold and I go to a boat show, I'm not as motivated to buy a boat because that's pleasure in the future. And then the fifth level, sadly enough, the one that most salespeople present their solutions to are interested and curious prospects. And, salespeople love to present, and they'll present to these people without ever getting the prospect to discover any pain. And if they knew a process like we teach them and they had the guts enough to do it, they would probably quit presenting to interested and curious prospects and start presenting their solutions to people who've discovered that they need us. Does that make sense?
It does. And it's an interesting point you mentioned at the end there with regards to sales professionals that just go in there and start, showing up and throwing up, as opposed to having the real conversations, being gutsy, as you mentioned, and courageous, and addressing what's important and asking those questions and following a process that works. It might not work because they might not be qualified, but it works if you use it. And by the way, a no is also a successful outcome, isn't it? Uncovering that a prospect is not qualified, that's a successful outcome. But it's interesting you mentioned that, because just kind of popped to my head. It's like, sometimes I feel that sales professionals and us as salespeople, if we do wimp out, that game of pain can sometimes flip over. So we have a rule at Sandler: you can never be more emotionally involved than your prospect. Prospect needs to be more emotionally involved than the seller, and that's why we have the pain funnel and all this other stuff, and then our pain step to get them there. But when salespeople wimp out, they wimp out and pull themselves into a painful situation. So they're actually they're pulling themselves into their own pain.
Yeah.
And then becoming needy and then just complying with the buyer and their process. So I think my question to you is, and you mentioned courage, what are the best practices for young sales professionals or even seasoned sales professionals that are struggling these days to uncover pain because they're struggling to ask gutsy questions, follow process? What are your tips to them with regards to how they can maintain their process and not fall into that ditch of pain and wimping out? What are your thoughts?
Well, the most expensive way to learn to do it is to fail so much and lose so much money because you're doing it the wrong way. And then finally you say, I can't afford to keep doing that. We don't want to teach people or tell people to go through that process, because that's not going to be fruitful financially. But, it's easier for me to do it. I'll be 69 years old next month, and I'm at the point in my life where, if you don't like me, it's okay with me. I don't care. It's that I don't mean that in an arrogant, bad way. It's just that I'm not going to go through any more of my life trying to please anyone. I'm going to be kind to people and treat them correctly. But if they don't want to participate in that, that's okay. It doesn't bother me. I've got plenty of friends, and I'll be okay without them. The quicker we get to that point, you want to get there way before you get to 69. But it's going to take some work. It doesn't happen on its own, right? You're a very strong guy, and you were strong when you came into the Sandler Network, but you're even stronger today than you were 3 or 4 years ago, and that's because you've worked on it. You've journaled, you've changed your mindset. You've that top triangle, mind, body, and spirit. We have to work on that triangle, to me, on a daily basis. We have to do that. We have to. I'm late today because I came from the gym and I forgot to check I'm usually off on Mondays, and I forgot to check my thing, and I'm sorry about that. But I'm going to go to the gym and work out. I'm going to get up every morning and do 5 miles, and I'm going to lift weights. But I've got to do the same thing with my mind that I'm doing with my body. And I've got to take time to do the spiritual things that I would do with my body and my mind. I got to do all those things. And if we work on that, we're going to become more comfortable. And I think we also have to have a mindset that, I owe it to my prospects. I have a cure for sales cancer, and I owe it to my prospects to let them know this and to help them. Just like the people that are on this call that are selling software that'll change a business's life. It's a shame if they don't do it, right?
Yep, 100%. And it's so interesting. And if we're going to expand that concept on that pain concept for a second, and I asked this question the whole time. I had a call the other day, and a prospect of mine who wants to join one of their programs said, James, how long have you been in sales? And I said, I've been in sales since the moment I was born. But realistically speaking, to your question, you must be asking that from an intellectual perspective, aren't you? He says, yeah. I said, well, I've been doing it in sales. He's like, you haven't been in sales for 60 years. I said, well, I've been in sales for 30 years. I'm 49. And I've been in sales for 30 years. And I joined the Sandler Network because Sandler's been doing this for 50 years. So I got about 80 years worth of experience in sales right now. And I said, but why are you asking me that question? He says, well, I want to make sure that you have a solution to every problem I bring you. And I said, well, here's the thing. We've failed over and over and over again so that you don't have to fail as much. You will fail, but you don't have to fail as much. But then I asked him, are you worried about failing? He says, yeah. I said, why? He says, because it's painful. Now, let me ask you a question. What's the best way for you to overcome pain? One, to take some kind of a painkiller, or two, to become strong enough not to feel the pain anymore. So when you go to the gym and you're lifting weights, that's painful. But what have you done, Eddie, over the years? You've conditioned your body to that pain. So you have a threshold of pain. I like long distance running. And for me, long distance running, marathon training, people are like, why do you do that? It's so painful. I said, well, I don't feel the pain anymore. Because we're just training and training and training and getting used to it. And I think sales is very similar. Because the more we're comfortable with the word no, the more no's we get, and we're okay with them, the less we worry about them, the less painful they become, the less emotionally attached we become, the more distant the more we can distance ourselves from the outcome. And as you mentioned, deal with our mindset and all this other stuff. So I think my question to you is, and again, I'm going to go back to anyone listening to this or watching this podcast that is new to sales, is new to the concept of emotional attachment, so those emotional barriers, either the buyer or the seller. If I were to ask you from a discovery perspective, so you got your salesperson in a discovery conversation, your top techniques, behaviors in those conversations to help these sales professionals get to pain easier, faster, and more confidently to build their threshold.
You want to talk about that?
Yeah.
Well, first of all, let's take all the pressure off both parties. For example, let's say I'm meeting with you, James, and we had maybe a 15-minute phone conversation, and we decided it was enough value in that we would get together and meet. But you're still going to be very skeptical of me because you know that I'm in sales, right? I might meet with you, and in the beginning, I might say something like, James, let's do this. Let's go into this meeting knowing that we're not going to do business together. It's not going to happen. Okay, let's go into this meeting with that mindset. Now, as we have this conversation over the next 60 minutes, maybe something changes. I don't know. But I'm going to go into this meeting with the mindset that I'm going to put zero pressure on you to become a client, and you should feel the same way. Does that make sense? Let's just have a conversation with no pressure.
That makes sense.
We just take it off the table, right? And then I'm going to start the pain conversation with salespeople need to have a plan. I mean, this would be typed out on my sales plan, right? This is what I'm going to say right now. I'm going to say, James, let's pretend that you and I are having this meeting, but let's pretend that it's actually not today. Let's pretend it's 3 years out. And let's pretend that we had worked with each other over that 3-year period, and you were really happy with what had transpired during those 3 years. What would have changed? And before you answer that question, James, I want you to think about two different areas that would have changed. One is, what are some problems, challenges, or concerns that your sales team's having right now that we would have cleaned that up, we would have fixed them, and they would be gone? Secondly, what are some of the things that you see on the horizon? They're not here today, but you know there's opportunities coming on the horizon, and you want to make sure that you and your team are prepared to get more than your fair share. Now, take your time, but what would that look like? Now, what I'm going to get from James right there, folks, is he's going to tell me about some challenges or problems that his team's having right now, and I'm taking notes. And believe me, you need to take notes during this meeting, and you can get permission, but they're going to be ecstatic that you care enough about him to take notes. But you're going to take notes, and he's going to go over those two buckets, the problems bucket and the opportunities bucket. And then I'm going to prioritize those problems. Let's just pretend that James gave me 3 issues in the problems area. One was he would like his people to be able to close a higher percentage of their business. The second one might be that he would like to have more opportunities to close. He would like his people to get in front of more ideal prospects. And let's say the third one would be he would like to improve the margin of his sales. He's sometimes gets in a competitive situation and has to give discounts in order to get the business. And then I might say, James, which one of those 3 should we discuss first? And he picks one. Let's say he picks closing. Well, if you look at the Sandler pain funnel, the first 4 questions go like this. Tell me more about that. Can you give me an example? How long has this been a problem? What have you done to try to fix it? Now, I would use those 4 questions every single time. You're learning. You'll get more specifics about the problem. You're going to get a recent example. You're going to find out, in some cases, it's been going on for a couple of years. And you certainly want to know what he's done to try to fix it, because you don't want to provide the same solution he's already tried and failed at. The fifth question,
and also those questions, by asking them, you overcome objections later by someone. No one can't say, well, we want to try something else, or it hasn't been going on long enough, or, I don't have any specific examples these days. We're going to wait. And so those questions actually help us overcome the objection, but they're still intellectual, aren't they? They're still intellectual, Eddie.
Yep, still intellectual. And the 5th question is how much do you think this problem's costing you? Now, I like to change that a little bit. I like to look at that question, and I see that question as being a chapter, don't you, James? Because it's going to take multiple questions to really come to that.
So many different ways, yeah.
If we say, how much do you think it's costing you? Most of the time people say, I'm not sure. It's probably a lot, but I don't know. So I would rather take it and work that by the numbers and say, I find out what's an average sales look like? What's the margin? How frequently do they happen? And if he's wanting to go from a 20% closing to a 50% closing, I'll find out the cost of that problem with his help. We'll figure it out right there. And now we're still intellectual, aren't we, James? We're
yep.
Even though we're getting to the money, it's still intellectual. But then when I ask him the 6th question, after I go through that whole chapter of how much do you think that's costing you, and say, well, let's pretend that you had that $2.3 million bottom line number back every single year, James. How would that change your business? What kind of improvements would you make to your company? And he tells me that. What would you do with the money? Yeah, what would you do with it? And then the following question is how would that change you personally? And now we're getting to really impacts, because, owners they got into business for financial reasons, probably, right? They wanted to have a better home. They wanted to put their kids through good universities. They wanted to have a great retirement, whatever it is. But we get to that point, and now we get into the personal impacts if they don't hit that number.
I love it. Awesome. And so now we're really at that emotional place of how their lives could be better, any frustrations that they may be able to overcome. I once had a prospect, and I said to him, how much are you losing? And he says, well, it's probably about 750 million. I said, what? What did you just say? He says, 750 million. I said, is that even a real number? He says, oh, it is. You bet it is. It's probably even more. I said, well, then how does that make you feel? He said, it makes me feel excited. I said, excited? Well, why don't you go and get it then? He says, because my salespeople can't sell. How does that make you feel? He said, that annoys me. That frustrates me. That concerns me. And so I love the way you juggle that gain and pain thing, because some people, their pain is that they're not gaining.
Yeah.
And being gutsy enough to really balance that out and check off those boxes, conceptually, of course, that makes a lot of sense. And I think that's a very elegant way of helping people really realize what's really happening in their world, what they're missing out on, what they could be doing differently besides the business. But it's also with regards to their lifestyle, as you mentioned, family sometimes, and just having a better, more fulfilling life. I love it. Excellent. All right. Well, this is a good time for me just to mention our sponsors, Novacy. So Novacy, they unlock behavioral insights from virtual meetings to close more deals. And Novacy's AI for sales intelligence records, analyzes, and provides insights on body language, verbal communication. So you know exactly not only what's going on your call, but why it's happening too, and what's really going on under the surface. Eddie, this is the time for me to ask the question. What is your secret sauce for selling?
I'm not concerned about the outcome.
Very good. I like it.
It's I'm going to give them all I got, but if it's a no, it's a no. And I also think of this, James. Many of the no's that I got later, sometimes 2 to 4 years later, turned into yeses.
Oh yeah.
I didn't burn those bridges with those people, and so yeah, I just wouldn't be concerned about the outcome.
I love it. Excellent. Eddie, thank you so much. I appreciate your time, your knowledge, your guidance. For those of you who don't know, Eddie coaches the world's best sales trainers and sales coaches. So, Eddie, you've been a tremendous influence on me and the network and my colleagues and friends. So thank you for your time, for your knowledge. And for anyone listening to this podcast, this is words of wisdom. This is many, many years of experience. This comes from the world's best sales coaches. So you might want to try some of this stuff out. Eddie, is there any book, podcast, movie, I don't know what, anything that you would like to share with the listeners and viewers with regards to kind of help, something that could help them really develop develop themselves professionally and personally?
Well, a lot of the Sandler books are great. I mean, I have to say that, but I do believe they are great. I mean, certainly if you haven't read the first one, You Can't Teach Your Kid to Ride a Bike at a Seminar, that's a great book. So I would get that one. I'm a big believer in transactional analysis, which Sandler is all about, so I like the book TA Today.
TA Today.
TA Today, yeah, it's like a textbook for transactional analysis. Very, very good book. And of course, the Bible's a great book, and you get a lot of good stuff in that book. So I would read that one as well.
Excellent. I love it. Eddie, thank you.
You're welcome, James. It's been a pleasure to be. I mean, I think the world of you. You're one of the best, and appreciate
You're very kind. I appreciate it. And to listeners, thanks so much for tuning in. See you next time. Until then, no guts, no gain. Don't wimp out and go for pain.